Sequels are a precarious thing. It's hard to predict how you, the viewer, will react. It's even harder to discern if it was worth the pain and suffering to make. Based on my better half's sorry state right over there, you can ascertain that this project was not painless in the slightest. When I started this, I wondered, how the hell am I gonna outdo myself this time? I'm happy to report I did find a solution. But before I unveil what that is, let's go back a bit. Flashback to a cold December. Christmas is a-comin', and I'm staring at the ceiling wondering, what the hell am I gonna do? I was still recovering from the last video, and I was just itching to get back in the field. The problem with art block is you really have no direction, no limitation, no deadline, and therefore no motivation. Man, did it suck to be me. Now kids, I don't advocate for this, but when you're desperate, social media can solve your problems. And would you look at that? I discovered that the silent manga audition has another round going on. The theme this time is Seized by Rage. Laying there, I felt like getting started immediately. I mean, I only got 31 days and 2 extra weeks and change. The deadline being February 2nd, 2025. Nico's thought at the time was, yeah, that's pretty reasonable. So on that Friday, I decided to try it again. Can a cartoonist do manga? How things would have played out was that I suffered for 20 days and spent the remaining 5 finalizing everything and clicking submit. Then, make a video documenting my experience and post it on YouTube. At the end of the day, my well-being would be no worse for wear. That's how it was supposed to go. That's how this story would have ended if I didn't start whispering in my own ear, saying things like, hey, I found another contest. Wouldn't it be sick if we did 2 at the same time? Hell yeah, the fool said. Let's do it. And now here we are. Yes, folks, Uncle Jackie here decided to convince himself to do not 1, but 2 contests back to back. The Silent Manga Audition and the Global Comics Awards by PIXIV, the latter of which is due near the end of March. So let me recount to you how that went, starting with the rules. I don't believe in them, so we moving on. Okay, fine. Here's the 2 rules I followed during this challenge. Meet the deadline. Meet the page count. There's a bit of a wrinkle about page count, but I'm already saying too much. Anything more will ruin the surprise. As for the tools, 1 computer, 1 magic device, printer paper, mechanical pencil, a clock, a calendar, a hacksaw, some tubing, a musket, a shovel, and me mitts. With my grocery list satisfied, we move on to the most important stage. I'll say now, I did not plan this very well. The first comic had the benefit of having 3 weeks of prep time. The second one only had a week. The same method was used for both. If you want to understand what my planning looks like for me, here's a quick demo. You take a single sheet of 9x12 paper and start with your deliverables. Write, thumbnail, rough, scan, file, ink, review, ×3, and submit. Normally you match each stage with a deadline. Give yourself a goal to meet. But here, I wrote it after it was completed, like a checklist. Hence the poor planning. So if you have a better way of planning that works for you, stick to it. Meeting the deadline is the priority here. Let's switch over to some creative writing. The second comic will remain a mystery till we hit that junction. All I will say is that this story idea has been with me for a while. Albeit vague, it still managed to save my life when the time came. The first comic was trickier. I really did have to fish for some idea of what this one-shot will be about. Where do ideas come from? And how can I get some? Walking usually works for me, but it wasn't turning up any good prospects. Here are my 2 other strategies that help me out. First, look up from your phone and see what's happening around you. In this case, I was in a general store. The place was full of Valentine's decorations. Well, I guess I found the setting for the comic, a situation involving Valentine's Day. The second strategy involves looking back at your phone. From there, open up a Google Doc and ask yourself a question. It could be anything. What do I like? What from my life can I inject into this? And what genre interests me the most? You keep writing until you find a question that finally resonates with you. For me, it's, how can I take the piss out of Valentine's Day? Did I mention I hate Valentine's? There's only one format that will allow me to throw eggs at something, and we're talking about a gag comic. By definition, these comics have a beginning, middle, and end. Like a joke, you need a setup, build-up, and punchline. Be wary that you have to end your story just as quickly. A gag comic making fun of Valentine's Day? That's the calcium that makes a story. From that, I need to form some bones. I decided it will involve 2 characters. The problem with my first one-shot is that I felt I had too many, with differing goals. By condensing it to just a hero and villain makes the job of figuring out what they want simple. Begs the question, who are they and what do they want? So I sat back at my desk and tried to answer that question with my keyboard. Here's the premise I came up with. We follow Cupid and his attempts to make a man fall in love on Valentine's Day. The only issue is the man doesn't want to be in love. That's the spine of the story I want to tell. That's enough for me to start the next section. How will the characters look? Taking printer paper, I established some animator lines on one side of the paper. Then sketch out the mannequin for both. Then I make duplicates of the mannequin and add some facial features. Initially, I started with character exploration sketches on the left, trying different hair types and expressions. Pulling up some references didn't hurt either. I looked up depictions of Cupid from classical art and pictures of Bob Dylan and Johnny Cash. Then I added them to the mannequins, finishing it off by adding the defining features on top like clothes and accessories. Here's those sketches. After a couple of days, I pulled them into Clip Studio and refined them like so. I added a 3rd page full of background characters. I wish I could have spent more time on refining these characters. Sadly, I couldn't spare it. They'd only be seen for 1 or 2 panels, so it made the decision less painful. I printed all 3 documents and kept them beside me on a music stand. I needed a tangible reference for this next step. All it takes is a piece of paper for this stage. Draw 17 tiny rectangles in columns, starting on the right as the first page, and the left as the last one. Draw an arrow facing that direction, lest you forget. Then attempt to draw out the comic panels and the scenes taking place in each rectangle. It's meant to be difficult, so I just started with 3 panels per page as a starting point. I went through 4 of these drafts, starting with 17, then descending to 16, and then finally 13 pages, possibly 14 if I need to slow things down. However, to get to this point, I need to switch hats, from writer to editor. As an editor, you need to cut stuff out. Before breaking out the red pen, here's the story I had. Somewhere in an unnamed city, Cupid makes his rounds, matching people together with his bow and arrow. He's truly happy to see so many happy, perfect couples. Matches that make sense. In a crowd of people, he spots a lone pedestrian, a sharply dressed man. So he attempts to match this handsome stranger with another equally attractive person in the crowd. After letting loose his arrow, the target hits the woman, and instead of hitting the man, it hits a sweaty construction worker, a mismatch. Cupid, slightly surprised, tries again, this time with a lady in cowboy gear. First shot, perfect. Second shot, misses his head and hits an overweight teacher. Cupid, a bit panicked but not beat, tries to hit the man in black first this time. 2 arrows just in case. Everything is still under control. Upon release, the man uses 2 men as human shields. Cupid's panic turns to aggravation, because no matter what he does, he keeps missing. Imperfect couples are being born from this song and dance, something this cherub can't abide. So Cupid forgoes the bow and just tries to stab the guy. But try as he might, the guy keeps dodging, grabbing the arrow at the last second from hitting his heart. It's here we realize that this dude can see him. The man uses this opportunity to throw the arrow back at Cupid. Somehow, it misses Cupid. Before he can chuckle at this guy, Cupid is hit with a falling piano. The man in black was trying to hit a rope support as movers were attempting to bring the thing up a building. Later, Cupid tracks down the man entering a park. He's seething with rage despite his injuries. He's about to fire a love bomb at this guy standing over a hill when his hand is stayed by an angel. Cupid's encroached in his domain, a cemetery. Things come into focus from here. The man in black stands over a headstone, taking off his ring and placing it down, then turns away from the lonely hill. Is it character driven? Possibly. Is it good? Maybe. Is it kinda depressing? Hell yeah! That's why I wrote it. All that I am certain of is that this draft's page count is 30 pages. Let's compare this to the rules, and sad to say, I can't run with this story. Not in its current form. So what can we do as an editor? Here's a tip I learned from Stephen King's On Writing. If you want to figure out how many pages to cut from your first draft, follow this equation. Draft 2 is 10% of your first draft. So, for example, if it's 30 pages, 10% of that is 3 pages. So my second draft must be brought down to 27. Any excessive fat must be trimmed. I'd remove one aspect of the story just as a starting point. For example, I'd probably consider removing excessive establishing shots in the beginning. A page of backgrounds turns into a single panel, or at the very least a cover page that gives all the context clues needed to answer the who, what, and where. So you keep cutting pages till you get to 27, then pull up the formula again and cut more. You repeat because you are of the mindset that nothing is precious. In other words, break out the hockey mask and the machete and start chopping. Leave only the essentials. Then remake the remains into something else while obeying the page count requirement. That's how we turned 30 pages into 13. Here's what the story is like after major cuts. If you noticed, I removed a lot of stuff, turning a rather sad tale into something upbeat. In retrospect, it feels a bit cliche. I don't take credit for originality. Seems like the idea has already been played out and told by someone more competent. If that's true, then the story is a failure. But I won't say die until after this challenge is done. With the story wrapped, we can move on to the art. There's no footage for this section, so you're gonna have to trust me on this. I'll describe the events that transpired as truthfully as I can. While it was raining blood outside on a grim day, I decided to grab 14 pages of paper instead of 13. The 14th would be a cover page. I needed an establishing shot to frame the story, so I decided a quick illustration with the title on it would be best. I outlined the border for each page. The panels would go inside that, then the art. I sketched the art with blue graphite for clarity. Thank God for storyboards because it made this process a lot easier. But I tried to be mindful. It's not a matter of copying, but looking for ways to improve the page. By the end of it, I had a pile of paper. With the pages scanned, I set up the file using the last setting in the new document menu. Move your mouse to the right and hit the 5th option called Show All Comic Settings, or this icon with the gear on it. Then up top, select Preset and scroll down to For Commercial Use, Bleed 5mm Monochrome 600 dpi. Scroll down to the bottom, select Multiple Pages, and type in 14 under Number of Pages. Then, hit Right Reading and Right Binding on the bottom. Once you hit OK, you're ready for the setup. Same procedure as last video. Open up the manager file. You see your pages in its entirety. One by one, import the roughs into its corresponding page. Once that's clear, use the border panel tool and create your panels. Then it's a matter of tracing, which is to say that you draw the mannequin established by your character sheet first, then open a new layer and draw out the character based on the model you created. Reinvent wherever you like, going page by page until you reach the last one. Here's an example of page 11 in its rough form versus the digital sketch and its final form. Don't be afraid to get a bit ashy-slashy with these edits. Nothing is precious. I started on December 30th. I finished the art on January 20th. I walked away and reread everything on January 23rd, then submitted everything on the 24th. What was that like, you ask? Well, I just clicked the button and left. Nothing to it. I wish it was that easy for this one, but not really. Remember when I said I didn't plan things out very well? It's because I have an impulse problem. I just can't help myself. So while I was slaving away wrapping up the silent manga edition, I whispered into Nico's ear again. Hey, this job offer came up. 5-week contract. Starts in February and ends mid-March. You want in? You need the money, pal. Nobody likes a guy with empty pockets. And that was a mistake, because the car I borrowed had engine problems. So a simple 2-hour commute both ways turned into 4, and the distance is about 100 miles per day. 4 times a week, 4 days out of a 7-day work week, I won't be able to be at my desk working. And I need an average of 6 hours per day to create 1 page. So if we do the math, I'm pretty screwed. Like stuck in a porta potty when the zombies rise up, kinda screwed. And I'm all out of toilet paper. So folks, What do you do when your time is limited and you have no hope? You grab some poison oak and start running, because we're going to need to be fast on foot, and quick-witted just to make it through. So let's get back to planning. This saved my life during this juncture of the journey. When I signed the contract, I decided on the same day, on January 2nd, that I would spend an all-nighter writing out the story. Then on a sheet of paper, wrote out the 8 stages as a checklist. And right at the top, I put the deadline, March 24th. My contract ends the week before the deadline, so that's a full 8 days I can be very productive. Till then, I'll just have to do my best every day. Even one stroke on a piece of paper made in 10 minutes will be enough. Friday and Saturday are days to have fun. While Sunday can be a neutral day, it can be spent relaxing or working, but not both. These were the rules I set for myself. Trying to do everything at once will burn you out. This will prevent that. With those guidelines set, let's start with the writing. Inspiration comes from the oddest of places. The problem with the car had me very worried. I'm no stranger to being death stranded. I walked long distances since I was 16. But to be stranded 15 miles from home? If I did end up breaking down en route to work, it would be on a back road. Trees all around me and few options to ditch my car. There's no money or help. I was freaking screwed. That was certain. All these thoughts made it impossible to sleep at night. It was one of those nights that I pulled up my phone and started writing. The idea was great. I felt so confident in it that I told a friend. And this was his response. So, basically it's Mario? Yes. Exactly. I hesitate to use isekai as a descriptor. If you know the genre, you understand where I'm coming from. For those not in the know, here's the spark notes. Guy gets teleported to another dimension. What he or she finds there is up to the author. Sometimes you find a medieval world with awesome swords and dragons and magic and stuff. Usually it's porn. The formula changes sometimes. Like criminal underworld on an island, cyberpunk city, alien invasion in Tokyo, zombie outbreak at a high school for some reason. But the one constant amongst them seems to be... With that said, I'm not writing that kind of story. Just the part that matters. A human being teleported somewhere. It's a premise universal to all of fiction. From The Time Machine to John Carter of Mars. It's an idea that led to modern fiction like the original 1968 Planet of the Apes film. And to a certain extent, Konosuba. And based on my friend's response, the entire premise of Super Mario, a random Italian ending up in a fantasy world, sounds about right. Pretty mind-blowing when you break it down like that. So why the long explanation, Jackie? What's the point? Well, I was laying in bed, and I asked the question. How do I take the piss out of isekai? How do I make it interesting? Then I came up with 3 words. The Wild West. This was a situation where you write what you know and research what you don't. Usually these stories focus on a medieval setting, but no one has explored a transitional period in time. Like in Europe, the medieval world had to give way to another stage in history before ending up to the present. Let's say for the sake of fiction that this medieval fantasy is slowly transitioning to a Western setting. Probably following an epic war, fairy tale creatures decide to migrate westward. For some, this is an opportunity to make one's fortune. For others, it's hope for a better life. For those who were there first, this great migration is an unforeseen invasion. For others, it's an opportunity to take advantage of the system. But in that scramble, lawlessness is born. Let's stick with that for the setting for now. What about character? The typical isekai protagonist is a young man from Japan. Plain, pretty average, not particularly popular with women at first, strong sense of justice. He's given a special gift to aid in his journey to save the world. Along the way, he increases his dating pool from his many exploits, meets new friends, meets royalty, meets gods, meets monsters, starts a harem with them, power of friendship, has to say goodbye to everyone at journey's end, or stay because of all the girls around him. Pretty standard. How can I change him? What if the wrong person got teleported? Nah, that's already been done. But then I held that question in my hand, turning it over a bit. At no point in the many comics I've read from Japan did any story cover what would happen if a cocky American got teleported by mistake. Then an evil grin stretched on my face. What if someone like Negan from The Walking Dead got teleported to a medieval romance? Oh, hot diggity dog! The chaos that would ensue. So I thought about more scenarios. What if an American... No, wait. I got it. What if some jackass from Texas got teleported to the strange land of magic and furries instead? And somewhere along the way, he lost his gun. Ooh, boy. Now that's a story I want to wait and see. So that's the setting, character, and conflict all in one. A Western isekai. The one-shot will be sort of a homage comic, something that doesn't take itself too seriously. The story's premise, as a consequence, is such. The hero drifts into town, asks if they've seen a gun, no, walks out of town. That's the story, that's it. Of course, making a storytime animation would be pretty boring if that was all the comic was. And there's a bit more to it than that. As a rule, generally avoid explaining the backstory. Although Stephen King frowns upon anyone fixating on backstory, it's good to have and it's good to know. You may never see it, but it helps inform the rest of the one-shot. A privilege I give to you. A Texan saves a Japanese business owner from being killed by falling debris. Because it was a puppy chow factory, he got buried alive in dog food. Naturally, he wakes up in a dark void, and a cloaked figure appears to him, letting him know he is a special fellow who will help lead a chaotic world out of the dark, calling him by his name. Upon hearing in a thick accent that ain't his name, she lifts up her hood and her coworkers turn the lights on. They got the wrong man. What was supposed to be a 26-year-old hero in the making, they got a 32-year-old man from West Texas, a divorced blue-collar worker at that. His only aspiration in life is living out of his trailer, relaxing, doing stupid shit with his drunk buddies on the weekends, like tasing each other on the neck to see who goes down first. This man, yes, this man, will be our hero. Due to an intern's meddling with the system, they can't teleport him back until he completes Takashi-san's original mission. Find an item and mail it back to them. Done. As a reward, he'll wake up in a hospital bed. The stakes are also straightforward. If he gets wounded or dies in this world, his comatose body on Earth will die too. Horribly. They took him to Houston General for treatment, so God knows who's on shift that day. Not wanting to die in Houston, our hero agrees, but it will be done his way. No magic, none of this legendary weapon crap, just the clothes on his back, his hands, and his wits. Despite her misgivings, his godly caseworker sends him down. The item he'll seek in this cesspool of horny wizards and ravenous creatures is a gun, a 1873 Colt action pistol, aka the Peacemaker. The last person who held it was a man named Indio. Upon arriving inside a broom closet, for once in his life he decided to use his head. And from that he came up with a winning strategy. Get into town, find the bad guy terrorizing it. You can always tell because they like to give grand speeches. Bust his head while he ain't looking. Then ask him, while he's being strung up by the villagers, if he's seen a guy named Indio. Nope. Okay. Sorry to bother. Then the village hangs the villain. The hero goes on his merry way like that, going town to town in that fashion. He makes friends with the talking raven along the way. She helps do the thinking for him on his journey in exchange for some beef jerky. And voila! This one-shot follows the hero on one such occasion, searching for answers. And because it's a one-shot, I can't reveal too much, just generate interest from the story. If interest is piqued, then usually a publisher will make the decision to fund my comic and make more. But I doubt that's gonna happen here. As my own editor, I decided to leave out the hero's interrogation, any inner monologue, or unnecessary filler. The story will be told in a flashback, featuring 3 characters, the good, the bad, and the witness narrating events. The event will feature the villain terrorizing it with magic. The hero will then roll up, resolve it, and promptly leave. That, my friends, ends this segment of Storytime with Uncle Jackie. The art section awaits. I won't repeat myself, you know the stages at this point. I'll show you the time-lapse for 2 different pages in a bit. However, some things do differ in this section. For one, character design. There's all sorts of ways you can get ideas for a certain look. For the 3 characters, here's how that went. Character 1, the narrator, was inspired by Flemish giant rabbits, and this photo reference I picked up from Pinterest. And to a certain extent, this meme of a screaming rabbit for this page detail. Character 2, the villain, was based on word association. Initially I chose ugly and swindler. The pencil exploration brought about 2 designs. I initially chose the ugly version and tried to expand upon it in Clip Studio. But after a while, I just wasn't feeling it. Bardock the Ugly seemed better suited in another role. Possibly comic relief. After 5 hours of work, I had to let this design go. Then, breaking out a thicker brush size, I sketched out the swindler version. It somehow became my go-to design. That only took 10 minutes to do. Now ain't that a witch? The final character, the hero, required the most time. How do you draw a human that fits in a story of non-humans, style-wise? I had a vague image in my head. I just needed something to help. Drawing mannequins was the first step. Use simple box shapes for head, torso, and hips. There's more to it, but that's a start. I will draw him initially at this angle, then add the anatomy and accessories. By the time I was done with the first iteration, I was having too much fun, so I decided to challenge myself again with another version, posing with finger guns. That second version seemed better, but it was dangerously becoming like John Marston from Red Dead Redemption. I wanted to avoid that similarity, so I initially wanted him to be blonde with a mullet. But by drawing more character expressions, I was getting more Tiger King vibes and thought against it. The character's inspiration wasn't word association or photo reference, but real life. The outfit was inspired by clothing in my possession. Having worked blue-collar work in my earlier days, much of it was designed for a preference for function over form. For instance, a bandana over your wrist can be used to wipe sweat from your brow or be taken off and used as a mask. Little details from my life helped with this design. The face and personality was a fusion of two people I knew, a former Fight Club coach and a good friend, the latter of which would always carry with him a smile and a hat on his head. I'm grateful for real life because it really helps inform your art. This led to the final design on paper, and then the final sketch digitally. What remained was the background characters. They got less attention than the first three, all of it done on one sheet of paper. The Raven, albeit the fourth character, only got 2 sketches. Another big mistake on my part. Character sheet for a non-humanoid would have been a precious resource. I had to pull up bird photos while working, costing me precious time. If you can draw it, do it. What I didn't skimp on was the background concept art. Drawing potential buildings individually, then trying to figure out the layout of a western town. Research did play a part here. Looking up photos of towns like Tombstone, Arizona in its heyday, as well as the remains of former outlaw town BODIE, and a little known video game called The Red Dead Redemption 2. I explored the environments and found that most towns follow an almost cross-like layout, allowing people to exit town in any direction. Sometimes these towns can be located in flat plains or deserts or near mountainous regions. Other times it is located in forestry areas near bodies of water. I implemented this information to my benefit. I decided that this would be a border town on the plains, with the mountains behind and on both sides. This would be the last glimpse of civilization before the infinite horizon. The sun will begin rising from this distance and setting in the mountains behind the town. Wish there was time to flesh out everything, but we're just gonna have to make things up as we go along. Character design is just one thing. The other things that differ are the inclusion of a cover page, page count, and spoken dialogue. Upon starting up your file, with everything being equal, you scroll over to the cover page section on the right. After selecting this option, things get a bit tricky. When I created the rough pages, the page turn was heavily considered. There was supposed to be a surprise every time you flipped to the next. Everything was in order and ready to go. What I didn't count on was this order to be messed up by this one innocent menu option. Once you enter in the desired page count, Clip Studio will automatically add 4 pages. A blank page straight after the cover page. This is non-negotiable. It's labeled as back page for the cover. This is to prevent potential bleeding when you send the document to print. So it's best to avoid drawing anything on it at all cost. However, this comic will be submitted digitally, and nothing irritates me more when somebody or something messes with the page turn. I wasted a day trying to figure out a way to preserve the original order of pages, but I was unsuccessful. So in this case, I just took the loss and kept moving forward. When it comes to page count, well, let's see. The rules state that to pass the Global Comics Award, you must have a total count of, what's this say? No limit. No limit, you say? You mean I can make 100-page epic and it still counts? What's that, you say? It's February 21st, and I haven't put any effort into starting the art? My. That sounds like a terrible way to start a challenge. I will confess that this comic didn't need 100 pages. That Stephen King method I mentioned before, well, it originally took 28 pages to tell this story, and after using this method, I can proudly say that the new page count is 32. I wanted 17. But after using this reduction tool 3 frickin' times, I was afraid I'd get to 100 by day's end. Why this happened was probably because this was a mini passion project. When you add passion to anything, nothing goes right. Referee, add another loss to the scoreboard. And let's add another point while we're at it, because Nico thought he could actually make the March 24th deadline with this amount of work. Moving on. From the rough stage, you can see I added the text in areas I thought would work. I strongly recommend you learn to place the dialogue first before making the art. I didn't do that because I like watching myself struggle. When inking was complete, it was about time to add the speech bubbles. I ended up changing the text to fit the limited space available per panel. Brevity and clarity were the rule. For example, within any given speech balloon, there was this long sentence, like, "My reply to his request was a stern refusal." And after I was done self-editing, the sentence was now, "No." Get it? For the first time, I attempted to use the text tool, typing instead of hand lettering everything. However, no matter the amount of forums I visited, not a single person could tell me what is the preferred font for translated manga and a font that I already had it pre-installed on Clip Studio. Not one. Hell, I even thought about asking some Scanlation pirates, but even that resulted in failure. They were surprisingly nice. Support your local pirate. Nevertheless, I chose 3 fonts for this project. The narrator and hero would share the same font, Kaikasa Regular, at a size of 33 or lower depending on the context. The narrator would use this font with bold and italicized selected, while the hero would use it without bold. If I need to emphasize a name, I would bolden it and increase the size. If I need to change the tone of voice for the villain, I'd use Kefa Bold or ITF Devanagari Demi. The former for big shouting speeches, while the latter was used for smaller thought bubbles. The pen bubble tool is a bit clunky, so I wouldn't recommend using it. If you have to use it, do one confident stroke at a time till you have a completed balloon. Remember that Command plus click is your friend here. It allows you to resize and move around text quickly. Pressing the T key lands you back on the text tool. Shortcuts did save me time, so is the decision to go back to hand lettering like on page 16 and 17. All I will say about this section is that nothing's truly consistent when you're inches away from the deadline. Speaking of which, where are we on that progress bar? What you say, Nico? We finished the art? Draft 1 is done. Hell yeah! What is today? Well, there you have it, folks. Your answer. A cartoonist can't do manga. That would be true if I wasn't lying. You see, I lied to you about the deadline. It was never March 24th. It was March 26th. That means I still have time. Time to spot check defects, go through all 32 pages in one sitting. We can do this. We got 24 hours. And I failed again. Except I also lied. To myself. The real deadline isn't March 26th, but March 31st. See? Never trust a bad dog at his word. Here's the real deadline according to the contest. I knew I'd blow the deadline. I know myself too well. That's why I set a fake deadline weeks in advance from the real one. If I fail, I still have plenty of time to work with. So, if you learn anything from this video, it's not art. It's lying. Lying is good. Lying to yourself is even better. After my Machiavellian betrayal, I wrapped up the third review. That entailed whiting out any problem spots and resizing text till it was legible. I finished my comic on March 28th, rested my stylus, and got a good night's sleep. The morning after, on the 29th, I uploaded everything to PIXIV with the contest hashtag. Once the load was clear, we're done with 2 days to spare. Yes, kids, a cocky cartoonist can make manga, too. Now you're all caught up. I must say I haven't been able to hold a pencil right since. This project taught me all kinds of things, especially how to hold a day job while working on my real job. I did end up fulfilling my contract to the letter. Looks like my trusty steed Gertie did get me through it all. Take my experience as proof that if you really want something, you can do it. Hell, when my injuries heal, maybe I can try this challenge again. Only this time with just pen and ink. Wouldn't that be fun? But I don't think Mr. Bad Dog over here would like that. How'd we do? Did we really do it? You decide. Till next time, enjoy yourself and stay safe. And don't give up.